During World War I, the concept of conscription was established. Conscription, also known as drafting, occurs when the government needs more people to support the country in war, so they take eligible men ages 23 through 30. With men being drafted to war, there was a strong need for workers, and many job opportunities for women opened. Women had to basically take on the roles of men. Many women began starting work in munitions factories. Munitions factories became the most heavily populated job for women at this time. These factories were vital to World War I because weapons were a necessity for the men at war. By 1917, women in munitions factories were creating 80% of the weapons used by the British Army. Here, women made weapons and ammunition. This job paid very little and was very dangerous. Handling ammunition improperly caused many deaths because ammunition consisted of dangerous toxins such as TNT. Women also worked in other jobs. These jobs included railway guards, firefighters, bus conductors, postal workers, police, and clerks. In addition, women began working close to the military. Several women at this time were doctors. They became nurses for the people in the military by setting up volunteer hospitals and tending to the injured.
The war was a calling for women. I could say that the war really changed their lives. For example, in Britain during the war, around 2 million women replaced men at their jobs. And in Russia, the quality of women in industries went from 26% to 43%, while in Australia, 1 million women joined the workforce. Not only did women maintain their households, but they also played the roles of helping to support the war. They learned many new skills, and as a result, their roles continued to change. Many women were wives who had once worked but had left jobs for raising families. Women had to step up in the men's place once they were gone. They gained more responsibilities. Women took jobs in farms, in factories, in shipyards, served military, and in hospitals as nurses and doctors. Women also grew victory gardens to provide food for their family, so that the soldiers could have foods in the stores. Also, women's jobs increased enormously within a large number of women abandoning service for factory works, never to return to where they were left without a home in many cases. The war not only affected women, but also tore families apart.
There were many things that affected the choices that women made during World War I, one of them being propaganda. Propaganda is information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. As America began to become involved with the war, many men left their jobs to join the war. This led to labor shortages. To make up for the labor shortages, women were urged to leave their homes so that they can work in the factories, join the army, and more. A propaganda campaign was used to encourage women to support the war. The advertisements usually used images of women working in factories, aiding soldiers, or supporting their husbands. A technique that most propaganda used was called bandwagon. This tells a woman that since everyone is supporting the war, they should too. Not only that, but slogans and powerful words were often used to persuade them. Propaganda did an excellent job at encouraging the women to be a part of the war. However, not all women left their homes to join the war. Many of them spent their time at home knitting sweaters, socks, and more. Then they would send them off so the soldiers can keep themselves warm. Many knitting circles were formed so more clothes could be made and sent off faster. Women also rolled advantages and raised money to fund the war. Another effect that propaganda had was that it encouraged women to persuade their husbands into going into war. Overall, propaganda had a huge effect on women in the war.
World War I helped women gain independence, freedom, and rights. The reason they started gaining rights was because they had to go work the jobs that men weren't in because of the war. Also because of the war, some new jobs started up for women. In general, women did very well with their ability to undertake heavy work and with their efficiency, which surprised many men. However, their entrance into the workforce was initially greeted with hostility for the usual sexist reasons, and also because male workers worried that women's willingness to work for lower wages would put them out of work. While the average pay during that period was 26 shillings a week for men and 11 shillings a week for women, the domestic chain makers in Cradley Heath earned just 5 shillings to 6 shillings for a hard 54-hour week. McCarthy made a film exposing these miserable conditions of the chain makers, which won the strikers much support and the strike gained momentum. Collections were held outside church congregations and football grounds. Within a month, 60% of employers had agreed to the new minimum wage rates. The remaining employers were boycotted until 6 weeks later they too agreed to pay. On the 22nd of October, the women won a minimum wage for the first time in history, doubling their pay to 11 shillings a week. There is, therefore, a generalized consensus among historians that women were not truly emancipated by the Great War in any country involved in it. This is because of the fact that many women still had to fight for their jobs after the war had ended and the men had come back.